It is August 2nd, 4 p.m. We are in the Brainerd City Council chambers. I'm going to call to order the joint meeting between the Crow Wing County and the City of Brainerd and Minnesota Department of Transportation on the Brainerd Highway 210 Improvement Project. I think we'll start with going around and introducing ourselves, and we'll start here with Tiffany and work our way around the room.
Do we want to start with
Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. MnDOT doesn't have Pledge of Allegiance on their agendas. We do. We'll start with the pledge.
We run an efficient meeting.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sorry, you just caught me off guard. I wasn't ready.
We're good. Now we're going.
Tiffany Stingline, Ward 3.
Alderman at Large, Kevin Stunek.
Jennifer Bergman, City Administrator.
Gabe Johnson, Alderman Ward 4.
David O, Mayor Brainerd.
Michael Day, Alderman at Large.
Dave Pritchett, Ward 1.
Doug Vogt, District 5 Commissioner. Steve Barrows, District 5 Commissioner. District 3.
He's expanding his territory.
District 1.
Oh, boy, I know why the county's all goofed up now. Can't even remember your name.
Bill Brecken, County Commissioner, District 2.
Okay, and welcome everyone in the audience. Paul, you want to take it from here?
Yeah, so just a little bit of logistics for the room. The green button in front of you all that says push, that's your microphone button. So you can leave it off when you don't want to speak, but if you just touch that, it'll turn green.
Oh.
I got it. It's back on now.
That was secret information, Dave.
I'm Paul Sandy. I'm the city engineer and interim public works director for the city of Brainerd. And I'll let Tim introduce himself.
Well, I'm Tim Bray, the Crow Wing County engineer.
So yeah, we're here tonight to get a first glance at what is the Brainerd Highway 210 Improvement Project. We're having this meeting so that you all can see the work that we've been doing with MnDOT from a project management team level. I'm glad everyone could make it tonight to see this. So kind of what we've been working on, so the project itself is a reconstruction project that takes place between Baxter Drive and Pine Shores Road. What you'll be seeing tonight are what the project management team has been working on in excess of, well, since 2019. COVID kind of put the brakes on this project a little bit. We were about ready to go to public input before COVID hit. We had some time left in our schedule to be able to kind of put the brakes on for a little bit while this thing played out. In the last couple months, we really started to relook at this project again with MnDOT and their technical staff from SEH. And we've come here tonight with what you guys will be seeing. So really, that's kind of the first slide, and I'll kind of pass it over to Luke and Chris, who are, Luke is the representative from MnDOT, the project manager, and Chris Heinecker is the project manager from SEH. So I'll let you guys take it away.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, our project management team pretty much consists of MnDOT, Brainerd, and Crow Wing County.
The button right there. Okay. Yeah, and like Paul said, we started back in December of 2019. We got SEH on board to help us out with this project, and we were all ready to go March 2020 to get their first round of engagement, and it was all in-person open house and everything, and then COVID hit, and we said, this project's out in 2025. We'll take a little break, step back, and everything, and then. We realized COVID wasn't going away, so then essentially we kind of revamped our schedule a little bit and kind of did a more of an online public engagement survey that we got out December of 2020, and a lot of people participated in it and advertised it, and it was a good turnout. But we'll get to that here later on in the presentation. But essentially this workshop is, like I say, just introduce this project to everybody. Everybody's a partner in this road project. It's a core road for this whole community, this whole area. It's a major thoroughfare that we want everybody at the table with this project, and that's the important thing. We want to have everybody engaged and make sure that they're aware of what we're going forward. This is just the first step of many to get to this project to 2025. And so, just an overview. Paul gave the limits here from Baxter Drive over there at the signal to Pine Shores Road, kind of the end of the 4-lane going east out of town, is the project limits. That was the original scope of the project, and to date, that's the limits we're keeping for this project. Over the last year or so, we've kind of revised the scope of what work we've been doing in that limits of reconstruct versus rehabilitation, mill and overlay type of thing. But we've kind of been looking at that through the technical analysis and research with our SCH, looking at the traffic data, and our functional groups at MnDOT looking at the materials of the roadway and what improvements have been done over the years. So that's kind of the data we've been kind of gaining in this last year over COVID and getting a better handle on this project. So our study of this project is essentially to learn about this project from all aspects of it, businesses, truckers, commuters, pedestrians, bicyclists. We want to learn, how people are using this, how people aren't using this, what are the problems, what are the issues, how can we solve that? We have some solutions we'll be presenting later, Chris, with SEH, but that's just the first step of many to get there. And this is kind of what the study is to do, is to get everybody at the table here talking. And as we go through the presentation, feel free to stop us and just, if you have a question, just let us know as we go through here. So we want to hear from people. And so here's kind of the schedule that we're looking at for this project. 2020 was a big chunk of, like I say, just analyzing the information, collecting the data, and it's not shown on here, but like say the winter of 2020, we went out with that online engagement. It's a metric quest tool that we use to people can just go online and take a quick 15-minute survey and punch in areas of interest and write comments of everything. So we did that in the winter of 2020. And then this spring we kind of been analyzing that data along with the existing traffic data that SEH has been obtaining and putting that all together and trying to develop some type of solutions and possible things to go forward on this project. And so the next step essentially is to go out our second engagement process, which we'll have a little bit more in person hopefully, and then we'll have an online open house also to gather that online feedback also. And then after gaining that input, going back to the drawing board and getting a little more detailed into the layouts and drawing more specific stuff to get a preferred concept alternative essentially that we'll need to bring to the City of Council for municipal consent. That's the end goal of this study is essentially to have a community approved municipal consent a layout that we can move forward with and design and build the project in 2025. So just a little bit about that study. This was done, I think, let's see here, November 12th to December 12th, we had this study open. And this was remarkable results from this. We had over 1,000 people respond to this study. We would never get that in an in-person open house. And we haven't even seen this on an online platform or web pages or whatever to get this amount of people to respond. So it was great to see this response, and I thank everybody for blasting it out there or sharing it on Facebook and Twitter. That was great to get that going. We did a few advertisements on Facebook, and that got a lot of response from that after we did that. So it was great to have that. And so this response had about over 1,000 people, and out of those 1,000 people, there's about 1,400 comments on that survey. So some people commented more. And if anybody took it, if nobody did, there's a spot where you could just go on a map online and just click a button where you saw there was an issue on that map, and you could type in what that issue was or what you wanted to see there, or different things you could comment on at all on that map. And there was about 1,400 of those comments along this 2-mile corridor. So it was pretty remarkable. So from that survey, you know, it was a range of a lot of people, as you see from the age group. Mostly it was the middle-aged people responding. Obviously, people under 25 aren't going to be too interested in it. And as you get 65 and older, online stuff is a little bit harder for people. So that kind of dropped the percentage of respondents there. But you know, overall, I think we had a good approach and a response for that.
Luke, if I could interrupt just
Yep.
for a second, I'd like to acknowledge State Representative Josh Heinzman, who's in the crowd. But my question to you is, why 58% female?
That was the breakup between 58% female and then 40% male were the breakup between the two.
Any understanding why the females responded more than the males?
I do not know. If I had that answer,
Ask Rosemary.
Okay, thank you.
No. So this is kind of what we pulled, this MetroQuest survey that we use as a tool as the gaining. We've done this on other projects. We can modify the data as far as tie anything to anything. What person entered here, answered this way type of thing. It's not tracking that individual person, but it's tracking how that person, if it was a male, how did they respond to this question or whatever. You can tie it back and everything in the comments. And that's how we analyzed a lot of this stuff to go forward with our solution is the next page here. So what we heard from the survey is there was a priority thing. There was, I think it's here, 5, 6, 7, 8, not about 9 categories, priorities, and people wanted to rank these from 1 to 9. And overall, traffic safety was the #1 priority at 17.6%. And then the second priority, which is tied for first, was 17.6% was moving through town. So that was the top 2 overall priorities. And then the next priority was access to businesses. And then the crossings of the highway was the 4th priority overall at 12%. And then walking and safety comfort was the next priority for all the individuals compiled together. And then the other priorities following that were the look and feel, and then the bicycle safety and comfort, and then parking, and then other was at, there must have been a 1% of somebody must have listed other priority on that. And so that was kind of how we gauged of what we looked at these solutions, you know, kind of the priorities that people see, because as Chris will show you in the solutions here, there's only 80 foot of roadway that we have, of right-of-way that we have to work in here, and it's going to be a balancing act to get what we need in these roadways. And so some of the other highlights too that we had from these comments, you know, obviously 1,500 comments are kind of hard to digest, but we were able to go through and take a lot of these common words like turn lanes, roundabouts, intersections, problems, when we were able to go through and look at things. But the commonalities of all these comments is most people use Highway 210 Washington Street for non-work related travel or commuting to work. That was just a data, that was just a thing pulled from the data, because you have to mark how do you use the roadway. Most people drive, and a small percentage walk or bicycle. That was just a thing we pulled too from that data. And most people feel the roadway works okay, but could use improvement. Well, very few believe it is excellent and does not need to be changed. So people are all right with the roadway, but they're not like really feeling good about it. But you know, it's not completely failing is kind of the message we got. You know, it's working all right. However, on the bicycle pedestrian side of things, we kind of got a vibe that it works really poorly for walking and bicycling, and many others believe it's okay but could use some improvement. So on the bicycling pedestrians, you know, it's obviously not working too well right now. It kind of seems from those comments. And then here's where we pooled a lot of those comments of people. You know, the most common ones were too many stoplights, needing more turn lanes or extending the turn lanes, better timing of stoplights, and some of the pedestrian bicycle wishes were adding additional room for bike lanes was some of the common themes that we found on that. So any questions on that engagement survey that we had? And otherwise, I'll turn it over to Chris and talk a little bit about the solutions.
Any questions from anybody? No.
Thanks. Thanks, Luke. Again, Chris Heinecker, SCH. Thanks for the opportunity to be here this afternoon. I'm going to spend quite a bit of time talking about more about the issues and some of the improvement ideas that Luke's been referencing. It's important to note as we started developing possible solutions along the corridor, again, that was really built from a combination of the input that Luke just addressed and a lot of technical analysis that we've conducted over the 12 plus months leading up to this rollout of the public engagement. So I would encourage folks as we work through this, there's a lot of material. Feel free to cut me off, ask questions as we work our way through it. Start out with a little bit of context. It's a complicated corridor. What we did to set up kind of a framework for presenting the information is we divided the corridor into several study segments. And they're kind of built around land use changes, major features along the highway. So as we step through the information, you'll see we'll go west to east through the corridor in that process. And this is the way we plan to present it to the public as well. So we're going to start in the west segment. And as we go through each segment, you're going to see kind of a common flow of graphics. Each will start with an image that looks similar. What this is showing, again, we're at Baxter Drive to the river is our what we're defining as the west segment. So the existing image would be basically what's out there today in terms of number of traffic lanes, shoulder widths, sidewalks, those types of provisions. And then under proposed, that's the idea of how it could be modified to help better address some of the issues we've been encountering both through the public input and our analysis. In the case of the west segment, it's a little bit different out here, just similar to the far east segment as well. A relatively newer segment of roadway, right-of-way is a little bit wider, a little bit more flexibility. So what we're focusing on here in general terms is trying to widen the sidewalks a bit. What we're showing here is today we're on 5-foot sidewalks, and we'd like to get those maybe to 8-foot. And again, that can be done within the existing right-of-way. So again, we'll come to more of these images later in the presentation as well. So within the west segment, the kind of the focus area, the focus problem area is at Northwest 4th. Obviously, some significant improvements have occurred here recently. A couple more ideas to further enhance, and I'll just step through those. The number one would be the kind of the south approach as you're coming up to 210. To go left, we're suggesting adding a second left turn lane, which would be kind of mirror what's going on across the road as you're heading south on Northwest 4th. So that could allow really an overall better flow of traffic through the intersection, improve the operations. And then secondly, we're showing where both the number twos are, we're proposing to extend the raised median through those intersections. That's primarily in response to the frequent occurrence of traffic waiting at the signal, backing up more than a block, and either blocking those intersections or making it difficult for traffic on 210 to take a left off to the side street. I was mentioning to Luke, I got up here a little bit earlier today and I had some time to drive the corridor, and I was heading westbound and I was just before 3rd, and that's what was happening. And I left a little bit of a break and a car took a left in front of me, and there was a car coming on the shoulder to try to avoid the traffic to take a right turn. And it wasn't that close of a call, but it's an illustration of some of the complexities of this area. With all the traffic, it's just difficult to store all the cars the way it's laid out today. So again, the basic suggestion here is to consider the extension of those medians that would then prohibit those left turning movements off of 210 onto the side streets. The other item I wanted to mention on the west segment, you're all familiar with, all the local streets have really painted indicators on the road surface to try to control vehicles so they can take a right turn only onto 210. Experience has shown that those are sometimes adhered to and sometimes not. So what we're suggesting, again, it's not just shown here, but if you can see my cursor, where there's paint today, the idea would be put raised medians there to better kind of limit what people can do and to control them and try to have the right turning vehicles only occur in those locations. So any questions on the west segment before we move on to the river?
I have one question.
Sure.
I like the idea of expanding the sidewalks from 5 feet to 8 feet because the 5-foot sidewalks just don't feel that safe. But I don't know, in this segment, it's when it's coming in from Baxter as 50-mile-an-hour traffic coming in and supposed to slow down to 35. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it takes a few blocks to get down to 35. Are there any other safety measures you can implement that would help the pedestrians? Because a wider sidewalk doesn't necessarily protect anybody from automobiles driving 20 miles an hour over the speed limit.
Right.
And that's the roadway that you're designing here is going to continue to have automobiles going 20 miles an hour over the speed limit.
Right. So it's the wider sidewalk will help in terms of just that comfort zone, a little bit more space for people to feel they're okay to be in. But you're absolutely right. It's not going to completely remove that potential safety factor of the speed of traffic, especially when if somebody's looking to cross the road, it's not going to.
Is there anything else we can implement in the project to protect pedestrians?
Given the part of the challenge here is the road itself serves a lot of different types of uses. I mean, it's a critical road for MnDOT and for regional traffic. There's lots of trucks out there, and obviously there's a lot of local traffic as well. So it's that difficulty of how you can find a balance to address some of those issues while still accommodating kind of the broad spectrum of the needs of the road. So it's probably a bit limited in terms of further restrictions. It's something we can just continue to think through a bit. It's probably less of a problem as we work our way east, where the roadway kind of just naturally feels a little tighter, and I think it slows traffic down.
All right, thank you. Anybody else have questions on the west segment?
I do have one quick question.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of accesses that aren't street accesses. They're more business type. Is there any thought to eliminate some of those so that they're directed to the street accesses?
I think we'll look at some opportunities, but we already have the raised medians out here, but as we work our way east of the river, we'll have some more commentary about ways to help that out by putting in raised medians. But there may be some opportunities, spot opportunities to do some consolidation, and maybe it's restricting, having a driveway that might be 40 feet opening today, maybe bring it down to 28 or 24 feet or something.
Simply as an example, I look at Walgreens, who has an access coming out right by the stoplights on Southwest 4th there, which can be problematic.
Right, and I think there'll be some conversations in cases like that, especially, obviously you don't want to have access points coming out into turn lanes. So if we can work that out, that would definitely be desirable for MnDOT to do so. It's just a question of how far you can take that conversation.
Anybody else? Continue.
Thank you. Okay, now we're at the river bridge, and this is purely just the bridge itself. Of note, MnDOT's currently studying the bridge in terms of what may need to be done to it over time to rehabilitate the bridge. What our assumption is for this study, it's currently a 76-foot wide deck, and that's what we're working with. Our assumption is we are not going to be able to widen the bridge further. So the challenge becomes, okay, what can you do to introduce some improvements, knowing you're stuck with what you got in terms of the width of the bridge? So again, another one of these images that shows existing, and what kind of maybe stands out here is, as you're aware, there's a wide median on the bridge. So our suggestion is widen the sidewalks by reducing the width of the median. Fairly straightforward. There's a kind of a ripple effect of that change that I'll get to a few slides further at the Chippewa Street intersection. But again, the concept here is, and what came through loud and clear in the public input, is this is really a constrictive choke point for peds and bicyclists. You got options east and west of the river, but to cross the river, you got to obviously got to be on the bridge. So how can we maximize that space working within the limitations of what that bridge deck width is going to be? So this is just an aerial view of that image. Again, the basic concept here is widen sidewalks, narrow the median. With the goal.
Switching, excuse me,
Yes.
switching those 10 feet, I guess in my mind, what would that do to the speed of traffic going over the bridge is in your professional opinion?
In terms of widening the sidewalks? Or
Widening the sidewalks and narrowing the median?
it shouldn't really have much of an effect. We're proposing to keep the lane width the same as it is. You know, you are going to have cars a little bit closer to each other now, opposing. So there may be some of that natural friction that maybe is like visual cues to drivers to, it feels a little bit tighter through here, I'm going to probably go just a little bit slower. So I think you could probably expect that. I don't think it's going to be significant necessarily, but it's a possible side effect that would be benefit overall travel speed, so.
Is that good, Tiffany? Dave?
Real quick question, we had this bridge closed, you know, due to rain, and it makes a real traffic snarl coming up on Laurel. How long would this be closed? Do you have an idea?
Do you have a sense, Luke, of?
Right now, we're doing the study, like Chris said, to what the fix is of the bridge, so we don't know, this whole project, we don't really know the construction aspects of it yet.
Would it be possible to allow one lane of traffic both ways on one side and the other? So it's
Yeah,
not
that is a
okay.
possibility, we're looking right now, at preliminary, it's kind of just gonna be a deck, you know, redeck type of thing, so you could do one side of the deck and switch it over to the other side, but yeah, that's gonna be probably a year or two out before we start to get to the construction staging of this project.
Any other discussion about the bridge segment? Well, continue.
So now we move to the central segment. So this would be from the river over to Kingwood, kind of the downtown core, the most kind of constricted area, as Luke referenced earlier, 80-foot right-of-way. So if we want to do something, if we want to widen something, another element that's out there today needs to be reduced. So we've got a fixed dimension we're working within, and what can we do with it to address what the public's telling us and address the kind of some of the safety and operational issues that our analysis is showing. So again, the same similar picture here. A few things going on the top. Again, the existing condition from 1st to 9th. Again, there's no raised median. Another challenge here, and this is 4 foot in the south side walk. That's probably generous. There's locations there where that's maybe more like 2 feet. So clearly there's a need, if we can, to widen the sidewalks. So again, how do we accomplish that? So the proposal that we're discussing is the removal of the parking lane on the north side from 1st to 9th. And I've got a slide that follows. We'll talk a little bit more about the parking. In doing that, we gain 8 feet. And so we can put that 8 feet to the sidewalks. So again, we'll talk more about that in just a minute. The other piece, again, is that raised median. And the benefit of that is managing traffic, trying to limit the ability of folks to kind of take a left from the sideline uses to go either across 210 or to head in the other direction. So those left turns are particularly dangerous, especially when you're dealing with a road like this, as busy as it is, with 25,000 plus cars a day on it. So that's the suggestion. There will be a mix of some of the local streets under this idea of staying open, the median open, and some, particularly those either side of where the traffic signals are. It would be advantageous to carry the median through those streets to limit, again, what's happening at Northwest 4th Street. So again, this is the general concept that's being discussed. And let me just get to so this is a parking image. Let me walk you through this a little bit. So again, we're talking basically 1st to 9th, and the red is the indication of where you can't park on the street today, and that would continue to be the case into the future. The north-south local streets, the kind of that grayish color, are locations where on-street parking is provided and would be retained, and then the black markings on the north side of 210 would be the suggested areas of removing the on-street parking. The other benefit of this, and we realize there's issues associated with that in terms of business access. But it's a real safety issue with, again, referencing the volume of traffic on this road and vehicles that are parking and opening and stepping out in traffic. It's not a desirable situation. It doesn't mean it can't be, but it would be preferred from a safety standpoint to not have that situation. So our suggestion is what's shown here. And again, there'll be more conversation with the public about that and what might be some approaches we can do to provide or access to, in particular, the handful of businesses that don't have any sort of dedicated off-street parking. Obviously, folks can go to the side streets, the public streets, and park on those, but are there some other possible solutions to address some of those concerns? Any questions?
I've got a question on this slide, or more just clarification. You kind of used blue in two different places.
Yeah.
One as on-street parking remains and one as Washington Street. But your proposal here is not retaining any on-street parking on Washington Street.
Correct.
In this corridor. So that blue line there's a bit misleading.
Right.
But we're retaining most of what we have on the side streets and not adding any more.
Yeah, so a couple things. So the on-street, the side streets would be kept as is. The color issue was discussed last week, so we're working on that one. When I was looking at this late last week, I go, those colors are really close. So we'll sort through that, so it's crystal clear to the public that we don't have that confusion of what's that bluish gray mean. But yeah, so the side streets would be retained as is for on-street parking.
Thank you. Any other questions on the downtown?
Yeah, I have a couple on this. One, what does that median do for speeds? Does that, do you guys have any data on that in terms of putting it in or not putting it in? What happens to the drivers? What kind of speed we're looking at?
Similar to the bridge situation, I think in general, if you have something raised up closer to you, even if it's just a curb and a median, that can create that a little bit more of a friction feel for traffic. I'm not going to sit here and say you're going to see some significantly altered travel speeds through there, but in general, having that little raised will help the situation or control the travel speed, as opposed to today where it's just kind of the same level pavement all the way across, and you just have a painted stripe to kind of tell you you're not supposed to go over there. So.
Sure. My second question is about the parking, because I actually happen to appreciate the parking in a couple of the places that are there. Do we have crash data for any of that? Because just in my own observation, I don't recall in any time of my own experience seeing crashes involving parked cars along that corridor. So I'm just wondering if we have any data on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the specifics of actual parked cars involved, like either getting out of the car or coming back on the road. But in general, statistically, the segment east of the river where you don't have the raised median, there's a higher crash rate than the segment west of the river where you do have the raised median. So that we do know that about the road. It might be through police records, I'm not sure, sheriff's records. There might be some research we could do to look into kind of cause of type of accident, kind of drill in a little deeper.
Yeah, my main concerns with the corridor are, one, the accessibility for people not in vehicles, but then two, also the speed at which people are traveling. College Drive is a great example of, it becomes a freeway at some point when people don't have any type of barriers or any type of perceived risk. There tends to be an increase in speed, and so that's one of my main concerns is making sure that we're not just creating a passage through our town, that this isn't a major divider, that it's an access point for people to get a main artery through and to get to their businesses, but then also just making sure that we're having access for people to get across it as well.
Right.
So.
Yep.
Have you, as part of the study, looked at how often those parking spaces are used?
We did.
Because I know I hesitate to park there.
So we do, and I don't have it all memorized.
Okay.
We have a detail, and we could share that information of, we did survey of, number of stalls, when they're occupied, how much. And it's a snapshot in time, so we're not trying to overstate what it is. But it does, the data shows they're fairly underutilized. And I think, again, that's primarily driven by just the lack of comfort to park there. Some people, that they're fine with it, but by and large, if they have an option, they're probably going to take the option just to not have to step out into traffic.
And then my other question was our parking commission and connecting you with them. I'm looking at Jennifer. Yes, will happen?
Yeah, yep, we will connect MnDOT with our parking commission. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on the parking in the central segment? Seeing none, keep going.
Okay, thank you. So a couple of kind of point-specific slides I want to go through here. Remember when I talked about the bridge and some of the ripple effects of narrowing the median on the bridge? So at Chippewa, again, because right now a lot of that bridge median has been used for that eastbound left turn lane to Chippewa. So to bring that down, to allow the sidewalks to be widened on the bridge, we need to remove that eastbound left turn lane. So it's a fairly short residential street up there, and so folks can use First to access, but that's the proposal to accommodate the bridge needs would result in the removal of that. You'd still have the westbound left turn into the Dairy Queen lot, but you would not be able to go northbound from eastbound 210 onto Chippewa.
Can we add a sign on the bridge that says like caution Dairy Queen ahead to the right? Beware of traffic backups.
Crunch cones.
Yeah, no, I'm kidding.
So that's Chippewa. And then one other, our traffic analysis that we conducted, there are 3 locations through this segment where the amount of right turning traffic really warrants a serious look at providing separate right turn lanes. And the major benefit here obviously is you're pulling that turning traffic out of the through lane, which becomes an impediment and a safety issue because somebody's on that right through lane and suddenly someone wants to take a right turn at the last minute and you can have some rear end fender benders. So what the analysis is showing us that that's warranted at East River, 4th, and 8th to add, similar to what you see at Business 371 today. Basically just pushing out the sidewalk a little bit, creating that right turn lane. Now we'll have to when we get into the details of the design, we'll have to figure out, okay, how do we accommodate this? We're likely going to have to take some sliver pieces of right-of-way to make this work out, so that all needs to be sorted through. What we're saying at this point is the numbers are warranting this to be looked at. We don't know exactly how it's going to be accommodated and fit in at this point.
And I think East River Road 4th and 8th both warrant turn lanes, but we definitely need to talk to the property owners and make sure we're not taking down structures or anything like that.
Yep.
Any other questions on turn lanes? Keep going.
Good. So now we move to East Mall area and the rail segments. So this takes us from Kingwood over to 10th, just east of the major intersection at 8th. Again, similar, 80-foot right-of-way. The difference here is, of course, along the rail property, rather than the sidewalk, you've got a chain link fence right off the curb. So for similar reasons, what's being proposed, widen this sidewalk a little bit, the parking being removed, and I've got a similar slide coming next that we just talked about in the downtown area, and increasing the green space, I'll call it, on the south side to get a little bit separation from the chain link fence and improve the snow storage for the winter time. So again, a similar parking slide, although this time without the confusing limited color scheme. So we've got the same colors with the red being no on-street parking today. That continues to be the case. The side streets with the on-street parking, and then the segment from basically 13th over to 5th on the north side where the proposal is to consider removing the on-street parking and doing some of those changes we talked about in the previous slide. Any questions about that?
Any questions?
Okay. Okay, so the next 3 slides, obviously the biggie of the kind of overall operational issues in this corridor, there's several, but the 8th East Mall area intersection has consumed a lot of our time in looking at options. We're going to share 3 of those with you this evening, intend to do the same with the public, and then when we get through the presentation of these 3 images, I have some videos will show that kind of show an animation of how these different intersections will behave under forecast traffic conditions. Each one's a couple minutes long. We can skim through them if you want to, but I thought it'd be helpful to help kind of visualize more than just looking at a 2D map of how these proposals would operate in the real world. So the first concept is retaining the traffic signal, doing some modifications at the intersection itself and the signal type to maximize the flow and the capacity of the traffic signal. I'm just going to step through each of the numbers here, and some of these will repeat themselves as we look at the other two concepts. So at number 1, the idea down there is to basically remove the intersection, if you will, of 25th, where you have to take the hard right turn and make that a continuous flow up to the north to 210. And then on the number 2 is the 10th Avenue intersection with the concept there of restricting the ability of people to either drive across 210 or take a left onto 210. You would be able to still, if you're going east on 210, you could take a left on the 10th. If you're going west on 210, you could take a left south on the 10th. Again, it's that common thread of the story here because we have such high traffic volumes on these secondary intersections. Where we can, we would like to try to limit how people can turn because of the conflicts it creates. And people typically you look for a gap to cross over. You start getting a little frustrated because there aren't a lot of gaps, and then people start taking chances. So we're trying to manage that as best we can within reason. Number 3 is the removal of the access today that you can still do from 210 to head east on 25. That movement would move up to 8th Street intersection where the number 4 is. Number 4 is actually referring to the connection or extension of the Cuyuna Trail through this area, the provision for that along this new corridor. Number 5 would be shifting the traffic signal from 4th to 5th. As you're probably well aware, 5th is a high demand spot for folks coming from the west to get to the mall. So how can we best accommodate that demand? You'll see a little bit of a change on that story in the next two concepts, but in this one, we're suggesting the shifting of that traffic signal. And then finally, number 6, just up by the mall, is extending a median through that mall entrance intersection. That's really needed because of the volumes at this intersection, the close proximity of that mall access is really creating problems that are going to get much worse in the future for people trying to get into the mall, take a left out of the mall, and how that affects the ability of traffic to flow through that intersection. We understand it's a limitation to the access to the mall in that particular location, but it's really a critical piece in order to get that major intersection to operate into the future adequately. So I will move to the next one, and again, we'll come back to these with the videos as well. So concept 2 would be convert the intersection to a roundabout. Some similar features to the one we just discussed. Again, the roundabout itself at 8th. Number 2 again is the kind of the restrictions at 10th Avenue. The closure, number 3, to that access to East 25. The Cuyuna Trail extension. And a new feature of this one would be if you're going east on 210 to provide a left end to the mall. And the major benefit with this is that really reduces the demand at 5th to the degree that you would no longer need a signal at 5th at this point. So that's a major benefit. You can't do that with the signal because it's too close to the signalized intersection and would really mess up the works of the flow of that intersection if it was still a traffic signal. So that's a major feature difference of this concept compared to the one we just discussed. And then number 7 is similar to the first concept, the change of access at the mall entrance on 8th. And then finally, concept 3 is roundabout but splitting into basically 2 intersections. If you think about each of these 3 concepts, this one easily accommodates the traffic demand into the future, by far and away operates the best. Concept 2 would be second best. Concept 1, the traffic signal, would operate the poorest of the 3, but still better than today, and I'll call it adequately in the future, though there would be some of those turning movements, and you'll probably be able to pick some of them out on the video we're about to watch, where you start seeing pretty long queues. But it can work, the signal can work. But by far and away, this one is the best at accommodate the traffic demand. So again, 2 new roundabouts, the same change at 10th, where number 2 is. Number 3 would be, now you see the kind of new 25 access to this, I'll call it South Roundabout. that stub up to, the connection up to the roundabout, on the east roundabout would be removed, where today it would be a public street. You can keep the rest of that roadway segment if you want, but there would not be the public road access where that number 3 is up to the north, and it wouldn't plug into the roundabout. Number 4 is, again, that east 210 access, left turn access into the mall. Number 5 is the removal to the eastbound 25. The removal, number 6, of the 4th signal. And again, we don't need the signal at 5th under this one because of that new eastbound access to the mall parking lot. And then again, similarly, number 7 is that change of access at 8th into the mall. So I know I went through those kind of quickly. Any questions about any one of those?
One question off the top. I mean, this mega roundabout looks pretty interesting, but it would have a lot of traffic as we're considering connecting the Cuyuna Lake State Trail segments we already have in Brainerd to what they already have built in Cuyuna range.
Mm-hmm.
This is where the trail connection would be. How would this mega roundabout in concept 2 facilitate bikes safely, or pedestrians even?
So it would, the benefit of roundabouts is, if you can see, if you're walking or biking, you're crossing one direction of traffic at a time. You wouldn't have the control, you wouldn't have like a semaphore saying you can go now.
Yeah, we don't need a beg button. We just want to make sure people can get across
Right,
safely.
so that's the major benefit of the roundabout is you're just crossing over, and then you have a refuge island, you can wait, and now you can look the other direction and cross over the next direction of traffic to get all the way across the
And
street.
on a roundabout that would have that level of traffic in the summer, when we have the summer cross-lake traffic meeting with just the regular 210 traffic, how long would it take an individual on a bike and a 5-year-old son to cross that intersection?
It depends. I mean, I can't give you a number, but what I can say
Would
is
it be in minutes or seconds?
It's going to be, well, it could be either one, really, because if you can imagine, most people, my experience in crossing roundabouts is, again, as they're designed, traffic is slowing down as they're coming into the roundabout.
Yep.
Some people, maybe not as much as others, but in general, the traffic is slowing. And if you're visibly there, ready to cross, I've had a pretty positive experience of people tending to stop and allowing you to cross over. I'm not saying everybody does that, but in general, that's one of the benefits. If you have your exposure and your visibility is focused all on one direction of traffic, hopefully you're making eye contact, a vehicle's slowing down already. Eventually, in I think fairly short order, there's a vehicle that will stop for you and allow you to cross. But it's not, I'm not going to say it's a perfect situation, and it is definitely a lot of traffic. It isn't necessarily an ideal solution, but there are benefits of that design that would help the crossing of traffic.
Thank you. Any other questions on the concepts, Tiff?
I have a couple of questions. So one is, in concept 3, where we've got 2 roundabouts, I guess I'm wondering about that left turn in the middle, if you've got roundabouts on either side, or if you put any thought to closing that left turn and just having people go through the roundabout and come back. And then my other question is, because I've had so much sympathy for Kevin the last few months, so I'm wondering how I'm going to get home at night. The light, if you take out the light, what kind of, coming eastbound through here, how do we get into northeast? There's just that one light. Are we going to have to put another light in there at some point to allow for more left-hand, northbound access into?
Right, so you will be able to, so if you want to turn into the neighborhood at 4th or 5th, you still will be able to do that. There won't be a signal there. But again, you're in a roundabout area, traffic would be a bit slower. And I mean, the models show it works in terms of how roundabouts treat and kind of separate and slow and control traffic. There will be gaps to do it. Again, I'm not saying you can drive up there and there's never going to be a car waiting. That's just the way it is with heavy traffic. But there will be opportunities still and retained to access the neighborhood. In terms of the mall access, we actually had some of those conversations about would we be better served to not allow that and have traffic, in effect, do a U-turn at the roundabout. A problem with that is, well, 2 things. One is you're putting more traffic now in that intersection, and it's traffic that's going all the way around, so it's going to have the right-of-way, so it is an impediment to the flow through that. So that's one of the challenges. The other is, again, from a volume standpoint and the amount of cars that are turning into the mall, there isn't an issue with, I mean, they'll find gaps and be able to get through.
It's good. Any other questions or comments on this section, Paul?
A couple questions. First of all, I want to say that I bring some concerns from Michael Doran, who's the owner of Nelson Doran Funeral Home, who is very concerned about the closure of the intersection. It's getting to where there's a lot of people that don't have any church affiliation, so they're utilizing the funeral home more and more. And a lot of the processions leave and go to Evergreen Cemetery, which is north up Mill Avenue. And so I guess my first question is if you look at concept number 2, where would there be like a frontage road put in? How would they get from, it looks like they would enter right in front of, well, I call it the old Pomida there, but how would that work on number 2?
Right, so if you are, I'll call it southeast of the roundabout, and anywhere in that location, you know, there's some redevelopment possibly happening in part of there, and you can kind of see the access drive there, so there'll be.
I see it.
That'll be provided. For other uses, one way would be to get to 10th and take a right onto 25, if it's hard to do. I wish my pointer doesn't work on the screens, otherwise I could show you. But if you're coming out, you can get to 10th, you can head south to 25 and hook up north through the roundabout.
No, I'm saying if you were at the funeral home, how are you going to get out on to the road here? Would there be a service drive here because you're on these people's property? And I also had a commercial realtor call me who was representing that property there and told me that this concept number 3 just isn't going to work. The people that are interested in buying that property don't want it if this is what you're going to do with 2 roundabouts. I don't know if you know that.
I've heard, yes.
Yeah.
And so,
Okay.
so to that end, so again, these are concepts, and there's going to be, each one has trade-offs, and it might be that that type of commentary eventually pushes us away from this idea. So this is not a preferred concept, and so whatsoever. But there's going to be feedback we'll get, both positive and negative, on each of them, and it's going to be, at the end, it's going to be kind of a balancing, along with cost, obviously, of what is done. So, but that's what we want to hear.
And I will say that it's not working the way it is right now to try to get out. The lights are, I don't know what with the lights, but the lights are too long. And there's just it's not working the way it is. And then there's so many cars that come across and they block the intersection. So if somebody's coming and wants to turn into the funeral home, 99% of the time they've got it blocked. So.
Right, and that's why, if you see, let me go back to concept 2, we've pulled that potential future access right in the curve on 25, just south of the number 4.
Yeah, and I see that.
Yeah, we brought that away from the intersection because of that very problem.
Okay. But the question that I was asking though is, then would you be buying property that's in front of the old Promida building? And then there would be like an access, once you come off of there'd be an access road going north then to the funeral home?
Yeah, there has to be some negotiations done to make that happen.
Right.
And if that doesn't happen, then we would just remain, that access would be a right in, right out.
Okay.
So where it is today, we wouldn't allow the left in. The way it is right now, it'd be just a right in, right out if nothing ends up going in
Okay.
in that site there. So
He did want me to bring those concerns to you so that.
So we've been working with some of the property owners here, and so that's where we came up with that new access location for potential development. And then, and we're hoping to make something work with this project, being we are doing this intersection, working with the business owners around there to make something work. But if nothing does happen, all these alternatives work with the right in, right out, right where it currently exists today.
Okay.
And so that's kind of the fallback if the future doesn't work with them. Yeah.
And then one other question with Gabe, with what you had, what is the law? I know that when you're in front of the courthouse over here, if somebody's in the walkway, they have the right of way. So what if the traffic is going and there's a family standing there waiting to cross? Is that whole traffic flow supposed to stop? Is that the law? Or I don't know, what is the law?
So you're
on that.
saying in the roundabout?
If you're in the
right, so-
roundabout and somebody's trying to cross, what is the law on, if you're in the roundabout, are you supposed to stop?
Yeah, you're always supposed to yield to.
Right.
If it's a marked crossing. But in the roundabout, I mean, there wouldn't be pedestrians, crossing traffic circulating in the roundabout, right?
Oh, not in
They'd only
there.
be crossing outside. Again, I
Okay.
apologize for not having a.
Okay, I
Let me
see.
just-
All right.
I know it'll be up to Mike.
Oh, yeah.
So it's the legs of the roundabout that they're crossing. Inside circulatory.
Okay.
Yeah, the vehicle does have the.
So they're not
right.
crossing in the center of the, okay, that makes sense.
I have a quick question for you. On First Avenue, Second and Third, are you restricting left-hand turns onto eastbound 210?
There is some changes. I've got a graphic with me that I can dig out and verify. But it's mixed along the corridor. Some are being retained as full, some are being proposed to be some level of restriction. I can't recall exactly off the top of my head on First and Second, but I can look into it and I'll let you know. So.
Okay.
So essentially, this east section and the traffic flow from 25 to 210 is kind of the biggest decisions we need to make as a community over the next few months in
It's
regards to
certainly,
this
yeah,
project, it looks
right,
like.
yeah, it's certainly the most complex area. I mean, it's a very unique location and configuration of roads that we're working with. And there are a lot of just inherent challenges given 210 kind of runs skewed through here. You have the 25 intersection, one of the legs of access was removed a few years ago, one remains. So it's a unique location with a lot of traffic. And so we spent probably 2/3 of our total time thinking through ideas and how to best address a very complicated location.
And one final question on the curb cuts, it's come up from other business owners too, like the Nelson Doran reminded me. If you have a curb cut right now, are you guaranteed that in 2025? Can MnDOT take it away without consent of the neighboring property that is accessed by the curb cut?
So if you have an access on a trunk highway, you have that access. You're right to that access. If we remove that access, we have to accommodate, pay it for essentially that access if we remove it. By putting a median in the middle of it, that's not removing access. That property owner still has a right in, right out access. So there wouldn't be any payment for that. They'll still have the access there.
Okay, but if they have a curb cut onto Washington Street, that's theirs. They would have to be compensated if it was taken away.
If we
without
take
their
it
consent.
out, yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, unless there was some exterminating situation or whatever, there's all situations. Don't quote me on it, so.
Generally speaking, though.
Yeah, generally speaking, yes.
Like,
So, no matter which one you go with, you have some new open space. Is that MnDOT land? Is that developable land? What is that in the future?
Some of it's wet, so there's going to be limitations on what you could do with some of it. But I believe it is, everything in that triangle would be MnDOT, I'm pretty sure, all MnDOT property. So what happens there may be opportunities, just depends how things, you have to just investigate that location and see what amount of it is even buildable, so.
Gotcha.
Okay, one more question. So as we're changing Washington, is there any, you probably have, but I'm going to ask it this way anyway. Any thought given to what that will do in terms of driving traffic to 8th and Mill Avenue at all? Or, because that's already too much going on 8th.
So when you doing what to Washington?
So any of these changes to Washington, maybe less so intersection concept 1, but I'm just envisioning that we might be driving more traffic to Mill Avenue, and we already have a lot of traffic on Mill, and using Mill as the access then for 210 rather than any of the other streets.
which is 8th Avenue going north.
Yeah, oh, sorry.
Right, yep. Our analysis that isn't showing any major diversions of traffic to other roads. What's happening is this is improving flow through the area, so 210 in effect can kind of handle more than it's even doing today. So we don't anticipate a major diversion to 8th. 8th's a major corridor and traffic will grow over time, but we don't see this pushing traffic onto 8th. So.
Mayor Dave.
Yeah, a follow-up to that is numeral 2 on your 3 different concepts, I absolutely don't like, just as a person that has spent a lot of time in Northeast. I cut across that road all the time, probably twice a day, all the time. And it's a very convenient place to get across, and it's far enough from the stoplight that there's no impeding traffic in that area. So I'm just going to put that on the record that I absolutely hate number 2.
Number 2, as in eliminating the 10th Avenue crossover traffic.
Bullet point 2 on all 3 concepts.
Well, it's officially noted. Any other questions on this?
I have a question, Chris, Cassaw 45 and Mill Avenue, or 13th Street and Mill Avenue are county roads. I noticed that you didn't have any concepts just discussed about that intersection at 13th or Cassaw 45. What does the data show in terms of traffic on if there's any improvements needed there? That's another signalized intersection.
Yep. So, I mean, the analysis is showing kind of what you have today. I mean, it would be reconstructed. There'd be a new signal put in, but there isn't a driving need to, lengthen turn lanes, add turn lanes. So with basically what you have today, just rebuilt, you'll be able to handle the traffic that we're forecasting. So
We wouldn't lengthen the turn lanes.
on 13th?
Not on 13th, but on 210.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, of course, that's a heavy truck route down to
Right.
the industrial park in Brainerd, and the turn lane does often reach capacity
Yep.
there, so
Yep.
I'm
Yeah, you're right.
hopeful
Yep.
for longer turn lanes.
Thank you. Keep going.
So now I'm going to do my best to flip over to some videos here. And I'll start with, so this is the no build. And it's just a continuous scroll. So this is future traffic levels as is. You will note there's some locations you'll see some vehicles that look like they're just not moving. This is actually a Google aerial image. So those are cars that are actually in the picture. So you'll see occasionally like cars driving over at the top of cars, but by and large, all the traffic on here, for the most part, is modeled traffic. So. But you can see, I mean, it's just, the longer you look at it, as you go through more cycles of this, you just see left turning traffic, queues backing up. A big problem becomes traffic coming, queues out of the turn lane. And so now you got left turning vehicles that are in the through traffic lanes, which is not a safe situation and really creates some havoc. So we want to try to.
Is this at Mill Avenue or what?
Yeah, sorry, yeah, this is Mill, yeah. So we're looking north along Mill across 210. You can see the traffic, approaching on 25, the long queue.
Yeah, it's Pomida's in the lower right.
Right.
We're looking
Yep.
north.
Yep, sorry about that, yep. So it's a good representation. And again, if you look closely enough, you can see, like, if you look at the eastbound left turn lane onto Mill there, how far back that's built up. That's just really gonna result in the traffic signal, the overall operations breaking down.
Hey, Chris, this is forecasted, correct? Forecasted
Right, this
traffic.
is future traffic levels, yep.
What year?
2045.
What month and what day of the week?
And it actually is the summer condition.
This is a
Yeah,
summer projection?
yep,
Okay.
Yep, that's a good question. So I think that, maybe I'll jump to alternative 1. This one's just about done. We'll go to so this is the traffic signal. So you're going to see kind of the picture of the new configuration. This mimics what you saw earlier on the drawing I previously presented. It just has a different color scheme. You'll notice there's quite a bit of traffic east 210 to south 25 because that leg, that kind of ramp today or that direct connection goes away in this configuration. You can see the mythical cars kind of driving off into the parking lot here.
They're all going across lake.
Yep.
But again, you'll notice there still gets to be buildup in the turn lanes. You can't remove that, but you can reduce it to a point where the intersection doesn't start breaking down.
So can you back that up a little bit?
Yeah, yeah,
And I still am curious about the
I think I
question
can.
of, like, what are you going to, are you gonna put in a frontage road right here? Because I don't think you own all this here, do you? And so how are they gonna get from here down here?
Is your right-of-way marked by the green line?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So you would need to acquire some land to build a frontage road if you did.
That's part of
Right.
the development
Right.
of all those parcels, as far as how that all ties together if development goes in there. And that was, that came to our access, our development review committee, potential development. And so that's the location we determined to put best place that. You know, as you notice, some alternatives closer with roundabouts is based on the stacking to that intersection. And there's some conditions tied to that access being there, and so it's still in the works, but that's kind of what we're showing on the alternatives if that does go through.
Right, so we're not at the, you know, in terms of what happens off the road that, like Luke says, that needs to be worked through. What we're saying is, because of the traffic levels, the soonest we can get a south, I'll call it southbound 8th left turn into that area is where it's shown, because of the queuing traffic back from 210.
Yeah, this is just an observation by me, but, okay, so let's say you're down at the Casey's down by Lum Park, and you're trying to get out, and you're looking left. Is it me, or when the traffic's coming around the curve, it's coming a lot faster than you really think it is? You know what I'm saying? And so here you have a curve that's coming around here, and somebody's judging how far that car is away, and it's coming around the curve. And they come barreling around that curve, you know, from the airport way. I don't know, it just seems like on a curve, it's just hard for people's perception to judge how fast that car is coming too. So I don't know, I don't know anything about it, but I'm just saying that's my perception.
Okay,
On a
yeah,
curve.
and we've, you know, the way this is kind of, I'll call it laid out is, you know, that curve, you know, and the speed of traffic, that shouldn't be an issue. I'm not saying, I mean, different people kind of behave differently and perceive things differently, but you should have good visibility to the left and right. And hopefully it also helps control or get people to slow down a bit as they're working themselves through a curve. Let me just get the video going again here.
So it could end up, though, in a bad case, in high-speed traffic on Highway 25, it could end up being as bad as or worse than the Beaver Dam Wise Road intersection, where we're kind of coming in on a curve and high rates of speed.
Right.
It could be a problem.
Right, but again, you're gonna have, at that location, traffic can take a left in, but they can't take a left out across 25
Okay,
to
well,
head
that
east.
makes it safer.
So you're getting rid of a major kind of conflict point by not allowing that turn. So that traffic would have to go over to 10th to get to
Okay.
25.
Oh, how many more of these do you have?
Got 2 more.
Let's go.
Want me to jump to the next one?
I think there's other signals in there too.
Oh, yeah.
This one has the Fifth Street signal,
Yeah, we'll
yeah.
slide over to 5th here first.
And on this 5th Street signal, you're probably going to cut the left turn lane is going to block off 4th Street?
Yes, I mean, you can see it right here.
Yeah.
So you got a longer left turn lane, and so now you've got a median through on 4th. But again, this needs being driven by not having access to the
So our
mall.
2 access points essentially to the whole northeast neighborhood in this is 5th Avenue, 8th Avenue.
And
If you're eastbound left turn access
right,
points.
and then at 2nd, it's 1st or 2nd. I'll have to look at that graphic to verify.
I'm thinking
Right.
first you're going to have a turn lane to get onto 13th Street.
Right.
So you might be back,
Right.
2nd might be open for a
Yeah,
left turn into
I
the
think it
neighborhood.
might be 2nd, yeah. So there will be more than just those 2. So. Okay, so I'll get to the
You better look for help.
number 2. So this is, again, the roundabout just at 8th. And you've got again, this eastbound left into the mall. You can kind of watch, you know, the car will come up and sometimes they have to wait, sometimes they don't. And again, we're not saying any of these are perfect. You can notice the approach here, you got a little bit of a queue building up on 25 or 8th as they're waiting for a gap in the circle. But from an overall operation standpoint, there aren't major issues at all in terms of, the length of time people are waiting.
A question on that, on 10th, right behind that old Pomida building, are people still gonna be able to, are they gonna be able to go left?
So,
Full control, yeah, it's full open intersection.
right, back over here, on the far right screen, yeah.
On 20,
Yep.
or 10th, it's 20 to 25.
Yep.
25 and 10.
Yeah.
Correct, yep, you can, yep. This one should, just fast forward a little bit.
Yeah, even in the simulation, they can't do a roundabout.
It's like.
I wanna know what 10-year-old kid developed this.
Yeah, see, you can see on this one, you've got, excuse me, a left for eastbound to north 4th.
Or you do have the 4th left turn, yeah.
And then our.
But 5th is still expanded longer, so you have less traffic
Correct.
coming out into the.
Correct.
Into the.
Because you don't have a westbound left into the rail yard at that spot, so you're picking up more space to lengthen that turn lane.
For the signal operation.
Yep. And then the final one, again, this is the split, I'll call it split roundabout. Little different angle here, kind of looking northwest.
So this one looks like it's backing up on Washington Street closer to 5th and 4th and all that.
A little bit, right, and that's.
The
you'll-
eastbound
Right,
traffic.
you'll see less of it on the east roundabout, but again, there's a backup there, but again, from a time standpoint, it's not a significant issue. It's not gonna be continuous free flow, but the relative amount of time any vehicle needs to wait to be able to get through the roundabout isn't, from the basic measure standpoint of traffic operations, it isn't a significant problem.
Oh, and then you'd have the space for a right turn bypass lane in the future.
What's that red thing that's right below the top?
Here? Oh, the close sign?
Is that a closed?
Right, so it's indicating there wouldn't be a public street connecting in at that part of the roundabout.
So if that's what I was talking about, so if you were leaving the funeral home, you'd have to go south, you'd have to go down to essentially 25, hit that roundabout and go up to the other roundabout.
Correct.
To get to the.
Under this concept, yeah.
So when you say there wouldn't be a public street, are you saying there wouldn't be a MnDOT street or,
There wouldn't be an access into the roundabout there.
oh, not into the roundabout, but
Right.
that street would probably be our job then?
You could keep it, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Which would solve the funeral home, kind of.
Yep.
Then I think that the sale of that, I don't know, I guess maybe you're not worried about the sale of that property, but I think it would be enhancement for Brainerd to be able to sell that. I think the people that want to build something there would be a good thing for Brainerd. I think the sale would be a no-go with the two roundabout situation. At least that's the representative from Close Converse told me.
So any other comments, questions about this?
Wouldn't it be minimally added traffic if you kept that where it says close? If you kept that as a service drive for that development?
It wouldn't be a lot of traffic. I mean, not that we couldn't look at, but I think wouldn't be best practice to have, private access into a major roundabout. I mean, I think operationally, it's probably not gonna create things falling apart, but I think from just a policy approach standpoint, the benefit of this is you're kind of pulling apart the
Right.
single intersection into two and kind of spreading the traffic out. So the fewer legs into a roundabout, the better it's gonna flow, because there's different, less directions of travel coming into it.
I get that. I'm just trying to conceptualize a way to kind of come up with a hybrid between options 2 and 3. I like a lot of things about both of them.
I think if we keep that a street and they go south to 25, they'd still need to go through both roundabouts to get eastbound, but they'd have clear and easy access.
To skip one. To skip the one to the west, are you saying?
No, they'd have to go south to 25
Yep.
and then take the one that's on the west. So they would have to go through both roundabouts, but it would be doable. It's not a,
And if you think about the total travel distance, undoubtedly longer. Travel time, probably not significantly different, because with the signal and the reduced amount of green time at the signal, the growing traffic on 210, it's a very short path, but with the queues building up and the ability to get across 210 becoming more and more of a problem in the future, that kind of almost free flow down through the roundabouts. Again, it's a longer drive, but from a total time standpoint, may not be too much difference between the two.
and it would be measured in feet longer, not
Right,
like,
not time longer, right, yep.
well, but not miles longer
Right,
either.
right, yep.
But, well, I mean, it'll take a lot of public input, and my opinion is only one, but this is the third best option of the three you presented, if this is the one that's gonna leave that empty box store empty for another generation. I think if the developers really wanted one of the other ones, I think we should really look harder at those.
So I'll just go back, just have a couple more slides here to.
Tad, any questions?
Not quite yet.
So it's one more slide to show, and then Luke's just going to wrap up with a couple of comments. So I mentioned, so the east segment, so this would be picking up at 10th out to Pine Shores. Again, relatively a newer segment of roadway. The basic concept here is existing and proposed are pretty much the same thing. It's just we're going to repave the surface. And with no, at this point, no proposed alterations to lane dimensions, shoulders, any of that type of stuff, any changes in access. That's the current thinking.
So I was thinking a little bit different, and maybe we don't need a 20-foot median, and maybe we kind of have some boulevards separating the sidewalks from the roadway, and a couple of trees, and a welcome to Brainerd, this is a very pretty town sign, something like that maybe, instead of welcome to Brainerd concrete jungle, let's go, right?
Yep, and I think part of the challenge, and Luke could speak to this better than I could, is limiting this just to pavement reclaim and redo is obviously a lot less expensive, and we're trying to figure out how can we want to come up with the best overall package of solutions for the whole corridor within what's going to be undoubtedly a limited budget. So as soon as you get into, I guess what I'm trying to say, as soon as you get into alteration of curbs, medians, it's a different price tag than redoing the surface.
I was in St. Paul today, I drove home this afternoon, and it looks like you spent a lot of money on some of the roads down there. We're just asking for a little bit of money, maybe some grass and a tree. You know, we're not asking for overpasses or bridges or anything, just maybe a couple patches of grass and a tree or two.
Duly noted.
Okay.
Wrap up.
Beautiful part about that is the city pays for aesthetics.
Hey, the city has money for trees. We budget money for trees.
No, like Chris said on that segment, it's, we did the analysis of the materials on that, and it's, you know, we could do a reconstruct, but there's enough life in that roadway that we're just trying to do the fix as we can't, you know, get it by for a next cycle, you know, in 15 years, then it might be up for another reconstruct. And that would be the time to address all the curb and gutter and all that. So that was kind of that approach on that segment there. So.
Barrett or Dave?
Yeah, I just had the one question on 13th Avenue Northeast. Have you guys looked at anything about that intersection at all?
13th Avenue.
It's coming right off of Casey's. So there's two intersections off of Casey's. There's
so what
13th
about
and
that
14th.
as far as?
It just in terms of, I mean, we're blocking off every other left-hand turn and or left straight access on 210, but have we looked at that one at all?
So that's kind of the aspect that Chris was saying. So we're reconstructing essentially from the Mississippi River Bridge to 10th Avenue Northeast there. Essentially, that's kind of where we're addressing all the accesses and everything, and that's where we're spending the money to adjust curb lines and the pavement and all that. So that's where we're looking at it. And then these, you might call it the end segments, you know, from east of 10th and then west of the bridge into Baxter. Those are kind of the ones where the pavement's actually in decent condition, and we're trying to just more of a preservation type project and redo the pavement. And at that time, when we're actually tearing up the pavement, then we look at more of the access management at that time. We did do some traffic counts at that intersection, just preliminary, to see if there's any problems, and nothing popped up at that time. So that's kind of the approach, overall scope that we're kind of taking on this project at this point. So yeah, to finalize this up, so this is the first part of getting out, you know, presenting this project, getting your guys' feedback. Appreciate all the conversation here tonight. Make some small tweaks to our slides, and a lot of the information you'll see will be on the online open house that you'll be able to access. Your main screen will be that screen right there where it shows a map and the different segments you can go in and click, and I'll go through what we're proposing for typical sections. It'll show the parking, no parking, and it'll show all that information that we went through tonight. When we're gonna try to get out, go to you know, newspapers, Facebook, you know, social media, all that stuff. Get some sticker decals out on the street so people walking the street and using the street can be aware of what's going on the project. We're gonna try to get out to the businesses, work with the chamber, do some partnership meetings on that, in-person meetings on that. So that's all gonna be happening here, hopefully kicking off here in the middle of August and going into September here of that engagement thing. And then we'll have, if people don't like the online, we'll have hard copies of the online open house here at the Brainerd City Hall in the Crow Wing County. We probably can put it at the courthouse or over at the complex out by the airport also. And yeah, you know, we'll work with the businesses, like I said, with Matt, and get that feedback, and we're try to engage as many people as we can through this next round and get that feedback to get us in the right direction going on. So.
Thank you. Any final questions? Any final comments from the engineers? No? Any final questions from the county commissioners or city council?
I will only say one thing, and I want to thank these gentlemen for coming and giving the electeds the opportunity to see this plan before it goes out to the public. It's an opportunity for us to have some time to process and to be able to address both the business community and the residents' concerns that will arise out of this project. So thank you very much for that.
Thanks, Steve. Anything else? Well, with that, then we got out here about 35 minutes earlier than we expected, so that